The biggest problem is there's something I really want to get rid of or really don't want. And it might be handmade quilts by my grandmother. I mean, I really don't want it, but I saw people scrunch up their face. They'd say, I just can't let it go. The issue is that's emotion, and you have to be willing to go through that emotion. And that means you can weep over it. You can throw those books away. You can donate those. Jesus wept. Mm-hmm. But as long as you hold on to something that you're really not using and really don't need, you're preventing the ability for you to do what really God intends you to do, which is something far more important.
Hey, housewives, come on in. You know the dirty dishes are still in the sink from yesterday and the laundry is still in the basket. Pop your AirPods in and make yourself at home here.
I'm Tracy.
I'm Tori.
And we are your Unlikely Housewives. Stepping out in faith and believing that God calls the unlikely, we are here to show you the appreciation and validation you deserve, lead you to authentic relationships, and release you of believing the cultural lies to restore your faith and wellness.
Pull up those high-waisted yoga pants, tighten your top knot, and reheat your coffee for the third time. Turn up the volume, and let's go. Hey, housewives.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. Oh my goodness. It has been, are we in 2027 yet? Because I sure feel like the amount of stuff that has been going on in the last 6 weeks is just like, whoo.
I know. And I feel like you and we sound different. We have the winter congestion and all the things, so we don't sound as normal.
No, we don't. We sound like we have been in the closet smoking packs a day for the last couple of weeks. But we're here and we're happy to be here. And so we have an incredible guest today, another guest that has been provided from our fantastic network of Podmatch. Again, Podmatch is a fantastic resource if you are a host of a podcast, or if you've got things to share and you actually think that you should be a guest on a podcast. It's a fantastic resource. So definitely check out the link in our show notes and join Podmatch, because it's been such a huge blessing for us and our show.
Yeah. All right. So today we have Barbara Hemphill with us, and she is passionate about eliminating the physical, digital, emotional, and spiritual clutter that derails our dreams. Barbara began her career in 1978 with a $7 ad in a New York newspaper, which led her to best-selling book, Taming the Paper Tiger. Her book, Less Clutter, More Life, reveals that physical and digital clutter are symptoms of emotional and spiritual clutter, a theme that has become the focus of her work today with individuals and corporations. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Tracy. Tori, I'm so happy to be here. I love what you're doing, and I believe that together we can be better.
Oh, thank you. Well, 1978, you started this little thing. Forget, what's the one on Netflix? Marie
Kondo.
Yeah. Where's your Netflix special?
We actually get Marie Kondo dropouts in our program.
Oh.
And there's a reason for it, because what she teaches absolutely works. There's no question about it if you do what she says. But the problem is she's a naturally organized person. I'm a naturally disorganized person. I was diagnosed with ADHD. I love to start things. I don't like to finish things. I love the big picture and I hate details. But I was blessed. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska. And of course, my father's a farmer. And if you're a farmer, you have to have systems. If you don't have systems, the cows don't give milk and the crops don't grow. And my mother was the assistant to a bank owner for 46 years. So in our house, we grew up with systems. I can hear my mother saying, we live in the second floor of a tenant farmhouse. If you're going upstairs, take something with you. I mean, it was like, that was the way we did. And I thought everybody grew up that way. And then when I became a mother with young children and I go to other people's houses, like, oh my gosh, that didn't have my mother. So
Barbara, you don't understand how much you're speaking my life. So my dad was a farmer and my mom was a bank branch manager. And this was my life. And absolutely pick up whatever's on the stairs, because our stairs were really tiny and narrow. We were in a farmhouse. And it was always, get the clutter. Like I can totally, so I did not have ADHD. I'm very organized and I'm a very type A personality person. It's just how I am, fortunately.
She is. I can attest to that.
But I have the ADHD daughters that keep all the little trinkets and all the little things and just the clutter everywhere. So I'm, as a mom, experiencing the opposite.
Wow. Well, it's really interesting. I mean, it's just, clutter is a challenge because we live in a culture of clutter and it's gotten worse. So if you think about it, I'm 79 years old. My generation, we kept things, all this china and silver and crystal and quilts and all these things for our children and grandchildren who don't want it.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, so what do we do with this? And then it brings up the emotional stuff of, what does that say about my life? What was important to me? So there's that level. And then there's the level of, I remember you're too young to remember, but I remember the first time I saw the crawl line along the bottom of CNN. That's an ADHD world because you are forced to look at multiple things at the same time. So that's where all of this started. It's very, very complex. And my business has been based on 4 words. Clutter is postponed decisions. I learned it from clothes closets. Clothes closets fill up because you haven't decided whether you're going to lose the 10 pounds to get into the favorite pair of pants again.
That's as basic as it gets, women. I mean, you're just like, I feel convicted.
I do too. Oh my gosh.
Or there's the piles of paper on the kitchen counter the kids brought home from school. Your husband emptied his pockets, whatever. And you say, okay, today's the day. I'm going to clean this up. And you pick up the first piece and look at it and think about, I can't do that today. And you pick up the second and the third. And before you know it, the pile is on this side of the counter, is on this side of the counter. And it's time to do carpool.
Yeah.
And then there's email. So many people today, before they even get out of bed, pull up their phone and open their email, open, close, open, close, open, close. And before you know it, 45 minutes have gone to, oh my gosh, I'm late. And you didn't change anything except that your mood is now depressed. So clutter is postponed. So when I first started my business, I never mentioned the name of Jesus because my grandfather was a very strict religious man who actually said at one point, he always said, God told me something. And I used to go to the altar when we'd have revival meetings and get down on my hands and knees and cry, God, please speak to me like you speak to Granddad. And he never did then. And at age 11, I literally tried to commit suicide. My brother was 6 years younger than I. He found me in the closet with a dry cleaning bag over my head because I decided that if I couldn't hear from God, there must be something wrong and I wasn't worth living. One of the things the Granddad said at one point was, if you don't hear from God, it's because you have skeletons in your closet. I didn't think about that until 10 years after I started my business. And I thought, how ironic that I started a business cleaning out closets. But when I would go to my clients, I started in New York. We didn't have a car in New York, but then we moved it to Washington, D.C., and I lived in the suburbs of Virginia. So I had a car and I would drive to my clients and I would literally sit in the car and pray that other people would feel the love of Jesus, whether I ever mentioned his name. But because I didn't mention his name. Many of my clients were Jewish. They were atheists. And I didn't want to be offensive like my grandfather. So I never mentioned his name. Well, when I train other organizers, I've trained over 300 of them. And when we train them, one of the first things we say is, who's your market? Who's your flock? Who's your tribe? Whatever the term is you want to use. And everybody says, well, organizing applies to everybody. And so they want to say, Jane Doe organizing homes and offices. And I would say, that's a recipe to bankruptcy and burnout. We got to figure out who it is that you're going to help. And the question always, it has to do with what did you do when you were little? And so I always ask questions about what did you like to do when you were 10, 11, and 12? Because whatever you were doing then is a key to what God created you to do, because it was what you were doing before your mom or dad said, oh, you can't make a living doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I remember before my mother worked at a bank, she worked at a jewelry store, and she used to come home with the little tiny boxes that were bent that the jewelry store couldn't use. And then the only private space I had was a very small closet. And my daddy built me a chest of drawers in there. And so I used to put the boxes in. How can I maximize this space? But then I said to my mother, what else did I do? And she said, oh, don't you remember? You called the family into grandma's, what we called parlor then, and you preached to us. Well, for years, I thought, oh, preaching, organizing, that's what I do. Well, I've come full circle because the clutter is postponed decisions, but the most important decision you will ever make is who is Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And when you make him the center of your life, all the clutter gets easier to handle.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we can end this podcast right now. I think that
we need to know how. Come on, tell us how. No.
Jesus. The answer is always the Sunday school answer of Jesus.
Yes.
It's always Jesus. Just know that. No. But okay, well, gosh, there's so much to unpack there.
I know, really. And let's start with, obviously, 11 years old. Let's just wrap that up, that part real quick. You tried to commit suicide. Is that something that you knew who Jesus was, but you just didn't have a relationship with Jesus then?
That's right.
So then it came later in life.
Exactly.
Okay.
I knew he loved me. Didn't have any question that he loved me, but it's like, I wanted him to talk to me because Granddad said, God told me this, God told me that.
Yeah.
And when I would ask, I didn't get any answers. And through the years, I was actually in a mental hospital. So I just suffered depression for decades, and I was in a mental hospital in my 40s for the same reason. Because of depression. It took me decades to learn that God speaks in different ways to different people.
Mm-hmm.
I really am speechless because I'm just like the trajectory of your life. You just like the way that God works is just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, so let me tell you the story about how the organizing started. Okay. So my first husband I lived in India. And while we were there, we adopted 3 orphan children, ages 2, 3, and 4.
Oh.
And we brought them back to New York City. We lived in New York City, and my husband worked for a nonprofit. So he didn't make enough money to pay for living in New York. So it's okay. I needed to bring in income, but one of my children was special needs. So I really wanted to focus on my kids. So I decided that the best way to do that would be to find a problem in the world that I could solve that people would pay me for. So I went to the playground and started listening to conversations. And because I grew up on a farm, Tracy, you'll relate to this, I was pretty handy. I could do little electrical things and plumbing things. And we lived in this big community of 5 high-rises. So I'm thinking, okay, I can be a handy girl. Well, in New York, you had to be a member of the union. So I was like, okay, I can't do that. So then I began here. And then I began to hear and see when I would go to other people's houses, I'd hear people talk about clutter and disorganization and time management. And I thought, they didn't have my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I ran an ad. It cost $7, which is a big deal because I used to walk 20 blocks because I didn't have 50 cents to the bus. And it said, disorganize. I organize closets, files, kitchens, you name it. Call Barbara Hemphill. And I got 2 calls from guys trying to pick me up. And the third call was from a 55-year-old widow whose husband was an attorney, a solo practitioner. He died suddenly and left piles of paper everywhere. And they didn't have any children, and she didn't have a clue what to do. And that started the business. And I would speak. I didn't even have business cards because I couldn't afford them. But I would find parent-teacher associations and Sunday school classes or church groups or garden clubs. And then I would go and give speeches on 10 ways to organize your kitchen or 10 ways to get organized for Christmas or 10 ways to whatever. And that's what started it. And I quickly learned that the number one organizing challenge was, and ironically, for many people still is, paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And people would ask me the questions, how long do you keep insurance policies? I didn't know the answer. I figured there must be a book on it. And I went to the library and there wasn't. So in 1988, I wrote a book called Taming the Paper Tiger, and that became a bestseller. And I became known as the Paper Tiger Lady. And I was on Good Morning America and the Today Show and CNN, and I traveled all around. And then I began training other people to do what I do and write more books and moved into the digital age and renamed my company. So I've reinvented myself many, many, many times. But the 4 words, clutter is postponed decisions, has never changed. And I spoke at our church last night, and I opened by asking the question, if you were to leave this earth tonight, what regret would you have? The answer to that question is a form of clutter, because I define clutter as anything that prevents you from accomplishing your work or enjoying your life. Because that's what God created us for. God created us to work. People said, when are you retiring? I said, retirement, that word is in the Bible. It's not in the Bible.
It's not. And people oh my gosh, thank you for saying this, because it is one of those things that oh gosh, where were we? My husband and I, we were at a conference for his company, and it was so a moment of where he was a president of a copier company, and he was meeting another president, and they were discussing, and the other gentleman was older and getting, up there in the age. And so, the question always is like, hey, so when are you going to retire? Yeah. And he gave that one line. He said, retire. He goes, I haven't even thought about it. It's like, because retirement's not in the Bible. And that impacted me more than it impacted my husband. They just went on talking, and I could not get that statement out of my head. I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Like, it never says like, okay, and then live your golden years and travel the world and go, spend that time with your spouse. Like there's not that idea of retirement. And then
so I would say, I'm not retired, I'm refired.
I like that. But it's just like, but too, you can see it. I mean, how many times do people retire and then
go back to work?
Well, go back to work.
Find something else to do. Yeah.
Find something else to do. But also that, they feel lack of purpose, go through depression. They go through divorces because they're not used to that. I mean, it does. Retiring causes so much because it's not in our bodies to do that.
Well, you mentioned the key to it, and you also mentioned the key to clearing clutter. And the word is purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah.
So when people have trouble clearing clutter, when people have trouble letting go, it's, first of all, it's emotion. Okay. So what I learned, I was autographing Taming the Paper Tiger at Barnes & Noble in New York City. And I made the comment that what I observed was that when people had trouble letting go, if I ask enough questions, I would always find out that they had experienced a severe emotional loss in their life. When I was done, there was a young man in his 20s came up to me and he said, my apartment is full of stuff. He says, it's mostly papers and books and binders and things like that. And he said, I haven't had anybody in it for months. And he said, I come home from work at 9 and I say, okay, tonight's the night I'm going to clean this up. And he said, I pick it up to make decisions, right? That's what you have to do. And he said, I become physically paralyzed. And then he stopped and he looked at me and he said, my mother died when I was 6. Are you telling me I have to deal with the grief of losing my mother before I can manage my paper? I said, well, I'm not a mental health professional. I can't answer that, but I can tell you what I've seen from experience. If you find someone you trust, probably not a family member in most cases, who can help you decide what you need and want to keep, you will solve your paper problem, and it will impact everything else as well. I was speaking to a group of 700 professionals, women at a conference, and I told that story. And a woman walked up and she said, "Well, you just saved my marriage." I said, "Wow, that's pretty dramatic. What do you mean?" And she said, "I came here with the intention of telling my husband, to whom I've been married for 13 or 14 years, that I was leaving because he's a pack rat and I have allergies and this is driving me crazy." She said, and then the tears started coming down. She said, "I never realized until I heard you that it wasn't that he wouldn't let go, but he couldn't let go. His mother died when he was 7 years old." So the reason that people have trouble letting go is emotion, and it's most often fear of making a mistake, fear of wanting it back, fear of forgetting, fear of being offensive, fear of not being responsible, etc. But think about it. What is the cure for fear? It's Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, Jesus, you have been created for a purpose. So one of the things, the company I founded is called Productive Environment Institute. And our tagline is accomplish your work and enjoy your life. So clutter is defined as anything that prevents you from accomplishing your work and enjoying your life. So the answer to the question, if I left this earth tonight, what regret would I have? It might be an emotional thing. In my case, transparency. One of my adopted daughters and I didn't have a bad relationship. We just didn't have a good one. She lived halfway across the country. And I made the comment to a coach of mine. I said, "Well, I can't do anything about it. I've done everything I can do." And he said, "That's a lie. There's always something you can do." And that was in January, a couple of years ago. And I thought, oh, okay. If this hasn't been fixed by Mother's Day, I'm going to get on a plane and fly to Texas. Well, the power of intention, the power of purpose, and it connected us, and we're connected. We just talked this morning about planning to get together in Florida later this month. So purpose is what the things that prevent us from getting rid of clutter are emotion, most often emotion. The thing that helps us overcome that is our relationship with Jesus, who has given us a purpose.
That's really incredible. One of the things that you had just said when you're talking about, losing something and why you keep things, so much of the value of things. So growing up, didn't have a lot, I know my husband's mom, kind of went through that. And when you haven't had a lot and you do have something, you hold on to it longer because you do have it now, whether it has purpose in your life now or not. So that letting go is also a difficult thing. Like we have accumulated things over the years. We just moved, we did downsize and we've gotten rid of a lot, but we're still hanging on to things that we know we probably won't use, especially in this house. But it's like, if we're having right now for us, the hard part is, do we try to, it's sitting in the garage, cluttering, like, do we try to sell it, or do we just donate it, and because it has value. Like
it goes back to decision making, right? I mean, we come back again to clutter is postponed decisions. So the decision is, okay, do we donate this? Do we sell this? Do we put it on eBay? Do we put it on Facebook? Do we whatever else? And
totally.
we spend so much energy on it. So here's one way to think about it. To me, it's stewardship. Mm-hmm. So I heard one of the saddest stories a few years ago. A woman said, "My children are 40 and their baby furniture is in my attic because I was always going to find somebody that would need it. And now it can't be used because it's not safe anymore. It was the car seat, and all those kinds of things." Yep. So look at it as stewardship, holding on to something that you don't need or are not using. You're not being a good steward of it because there is somebody somewhere who would be happy to have it. So one of the things that I encourage everybody to do is take some time doing some research, talking to people, getting on the internet, finding out who accepts donations. There are lots of places that will. Mm-hmm. I did a speech at our church last night, and I invited 3 nonprofits to come to share what kinds of things they would take. Mm-hmm. And then there's an organization called the Golden Key, and a lot of organizers belong to it. And it's one where if you have a vase or something and you think it might be valuable, you can take a picture of it and put it on there, and then they can do some research on whether it's useful or not. So one of the premises that started with Taming the Paper Tiger was a statement, today's mail is tomorrow's pile. So when we would go in, I've organized thousands of offices we have a proprietary finding system for papers, and I've done thousands of offices using that. We always ignore all the old papers. We're going to stop the problem. So last night, somebody talked about photographs. Okay, don't try to organize the old photographs. Stop the problem first. And so the way you stop the problem is by a system. We use the acronym SYSTEM, saving you space, time, energy, and money. So every household, we're always organizing is an ongoing thing. It's not something, it's not like, oh, we're organized, it's done now. Because stuff keeps coming in at rapid rates. So that means you need to have a system in place for getting rid of what you're not using. And it can be very simple. For example, in every house, on every floor, there should be one box with no lid on it that says donations. So that when you take the blouse out of the closet, and even though your mother gave it to you and you love your mother, it's really not your style and you don't feel good wearing it, you immediately put it in that box. And then when the box is full, you put it in the back of your trunk of your car and you have a place that you know to go. That's part of a system.
Yeah. And then you drive around with it for 3 weeks in the back of your trunk of your car until you finally go, oh, now I have time, or I'm just driving by it. I can actually donate it.
Ask your kids. Okay, so here's a really important thing. There are 3 components necessary for decluttering and staying organized: system, accountability, and community. So you cannot clear clutter randomly. Last night, somebody talked about a garage and said, I just shuffle. I just go in and move things around. Yeah. Because there's no system. There has to be a system to make decisions. And that's an art. We call it the art of organizing. Like with paper, we have a new book that just came out called Soar to Success, the art of organizing information and finally getting things done. And art it's what will you do? People say, what should I do? And I say, that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? Okay, so you need a system. So with the stuff coming in, you need a system. This is how we're going to do it. That involves, where are the places that I can donate it? What are the things that I have? Dress for Success or the local, there are different places, and figure out what that is. And then the accountability. Have your kids make it. Kids love to hold you accountable. Tell your child, I need to drop that off. They love it. Mm-hmm. They love it. And then it's community. Okay, so you're donating to that facility, whatever it is. That's community. They can't do what God told them to do if you don't bring them the things that they're going to give to the people who need it. So in order to clear clutter, you need a system, accountability, and community.
That's true. My children would love to tell me that I'm wrong. So
yes, of course they would.
Mom, you failed again. You told us I was going to be dropped off by the time you picked us up from school.
That is true.
They would just do it. They would look in the back seat just to make sure. Oh man, she dropped it off. Dang it. Can't yell at her.
I like that. I do like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back real quick to the photos thing. Okay, so we're more digital photos. We have them all on our phones. We could all pull them up. It's like, 25,000 photos. We've got them backed up on iCloud. We've got, like, for me, it was before the phone. So I've got the hard drive. I have, 2 hard drives that were put on a little, thing. Like, I've got all of that of my kids' childhood. Now I feel more organized in that than I did, a few years ago, because we did get it put on a smaller one. But it's still clutter. It's still something that we want to do. I'm like, I need to go through that because I've got a senior graduating and I want to go through all the photos. But now I'm like overwhelmed because I don't even know where to start on all those things.
Right. Well, so first of all, it is a huge topic, obviously, because there are just so many angles to it. But let me bring up a couple of things. First of all, photographs and memorabilia are the most difficult things to organize, hands down. We have a program called Soar to Success where people join our team. So we have a system for organizing, we have accountability, and we do it together. So we literally get on Zoom. There are women getting on Zoom, and we're all working on our projects together. And then we have consultants there to answer questions and do things like that. every single time, the most difficult thing for people is memorabilia and photographs because it's the most emotion and it's the most tedious. You know what? So here's where you want to stop the problem. So you say, okay, going forward, we're early in 26 yet. So we have a 5-step process we use. State your vision, identify your obstacles, commit your resources, design and execute your plan, and sustain your success. Notice the common word, your. It's art. Mm-hmm. So you start with, okay, if my photographs were organized, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would I be able to do that I can't do now? How would I measure it? How would I know? And so that's what stops. And then you say, what are the obstacles? Well, time. Okay, well, everything takes time to solve. So how much time are you willing to invest in it? And what's your way of doing time? Some people, it's like, I would do better doing 10 minutes a day. And somebody else would do better taking that 10 minutes, adding it up and doing it. I can't do the math, but doing it once a week or something. So again, it's the art of what it needs to be. So we always have to stop the problem in order to move forward. But here's what I would tell you. I'm going to give you a link to a 14-minute video that is about organizing paper. It's about decision making. If you take that, if you have paper in your life, organize the paper first because it will teach you decision making. And that decision making will impact every single thing else that you do.
That's so good. So, because I'm going to ask another question. So you had talked about being ADHD, because that is something with, in my house, there's a lot of ADHD and there's a lot of clutter and a lot of paper, but in their brains, they know where everything is and that's organized to them. But to me, it looks like clutter. So what's your advice on that to work together and get to a happy medium?
Well, my definition of organization is, and it is something organized. There are 4 questions. Number 1, does it work? Number 2, do you like it? If you don't like it, you won't maintain it. It'll work for a while, but then it'll fall apart.
Okay.
And number 3 is, does it work for the people it impacts? So when you're in a family, what you're doing has to work for everybody. And then the 4th one is, can you recover quickly? What I mean by that, the old adage about a place for everything and everything in its place. That's ridiculous. That was right, but it's half right. Mm-hmm. Clutter is not the problem. The problem is when you get clutter and you don't know what to do with it. So recovering quickly. So one of the rules in my house, if you come to my house on a Thursday, today's Tuesday, so things are pretty good yet today. But if you came here Thursday afternoon and I have a home office, you might look around and say, did they pay you money for organizing? Because like I said, I'm not naturally organized. Well, but Friday, if you came in, everything would be in place. And it took me less than 30 minutes to do it. So the question is, what level of clutter are you willing to live with? And how quickly can you clean it up? So I told that to one of my clients, and his wife had relegated him to a windowless room in the basement because she hated his clutter. And he hated the room. And he heard that story and he said, if I would clear up the clutter the first thing in the morning, I could do it in 5 minutes. He said, I hate cleaning it up, but I also hate this office. So that's trade-offs, right? I married a retired Army colonel. I figured he'd be organized. The first 6 months we were married, I thought, this is going to be the end of my business. This man is supposed to. If you come to our house, it will be very clear whose part of the house is whose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we are all entitled, but there's also something called boundaries, and there's also something called respect, and there's also something called compromise. Mm-hmm. So it's something we do together.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that having 4 kids, I have been able to figure out at the teenage level. Let's just put it that way. When we were younger, we did so much better. Like when they were little, at 7:00 every night before bed, we had 7 minutes of music and dance time, and it was cleanup. And it was just what we could do for the day. And that was it. And when they were little, it was so much easier to, clean up, that was great. Now that they all have their own rooms and it's their safe havens, they are a disaster, but they get they can have it that way until Sunday, usually is my like marker. Sometimes it's Monday if we're really busy. On Sundays, it's Monday night. But all I have to say is room will be spotless by Sunday night or Monday night. And that's it. And then we shut the doors every day. They get to have the room the way they want. And I mean, it's dirty laundry, it's wet towels, it's socks everywhere, it's papers. But I had to let them have that space to live. But when I say do it, it literally only takes them 15 minutes.
There you
maybe
go.
30 minutes. It does not take long, but it gets done. So that's our compromise, is that's their space.
I think that's the art.
It has taken a while because the difference is the move. We moved in the fall and we downsized. And so they have less space and less things because we got rid of a lot. And when we went into their place, into their rooms, I'm like, okay, what does not need to go in here?
Right.
But okay.
One of the things I want to tell you that this is really important. When I first started organizing, I would go in and the mother would say to me, let's do the kids' rooms. And I'd say, no. I will not do the kids' room until we do yours, because you do not have a right to tell your children to clean up their clutter if you haven't cleaned up yours.
Yep.
And part of the way, and this applies over too I told you about my husband, clutter doesn't bother him. He doesn't notice it or whatever. And when his clutter is bothering me, I have found the way I fix it. Go find something of my own that needs cleaning up. It works like a charm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is, clutter does not equal, does clutter equal just stuff? You can see behind me, I have one bookshelf that is partly here. I love books. I love having physical books. Doesn't mean I read them all, but I have them on my shelf for the day that I finally go, oh, where's that book that I bought X amount? Is that the kind of thing that we need to get, to get, I mean, is clutter just things taking up physical space, or is it things that like this is a lovely decorated bookshelf. It doesn't bother me. This is fine. This works for me. But, like in another space where it's all not organized and it's just books, like go through the ones that I don't need anymore. Is that the kind of thing, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's a great question. And so there's something called what we call the cost factor. You can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price. And the price is space, time, energy, and money. So it's not a moral decision. It's what is it? How much is it worth to you? And is keeping this preventing you from doing something else? So last night at the presentation, there was a woman who talked about, she had the funeral books from a bunch of aunts. She says, I have one daughter. The one daughter has absolutely no interest in them. There's nobody who knows them anymore. There's nobody left. And she said, but I felt so disrespectful letting go of them because it's like, it's somebody's life.
Yeah.
But she testified last night that she had heard me speak a couple of years ago. And she said she did let them go. And she said, and I used the space, and then I don't remember what it was, for something else. So it's not a moral issue. Oh, and I want to tell you something about Book Story. I used to autograph books. The books want to autograph books, right? And I would help. Books come right up there with photographs in terms of the difficulty.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And what I would found is that when people had autograph books, they really were reluctant to let go of it because it felt disrespectful if their name was in it. So last night I autographed 20 books. I autographed them Blessings, Barbara Hemphill. And I said, now when you're done with the book, it doesn't have your name in it, which means you can pass it on to somebody else. So from a marketing standpoint, it means somebody else might read the book instead of it being clutter on your bookshelf.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And because there's a wonderful organization called Prison Ministries Alliance. And they donate any Christian books or Bibles to prisons, and they do phenomenal work. So there's an example of there are places that can take those. So instead of it being a mess, it's a blessing.
Do you have resources like this on your website? Like if people were to go, because I was going to say that would be my jam is, I have so many books and I don't have a library like I did in my old house. So they're in tubs, so I do need to let go of them, many of them, but it's hard because you're I don't
one of those things. One of the dreams that I've dreamed of, one of my dreams that just forever is I've dreamed of a billboard. And I wanted the billboard purple's my favorite color. And I wanted it to be in purple. And in big white letters, I wanted it to say clutterhurts.com. And then when you went on the website, it would say, if you're a business, go here. And if you're an individual, go here. And then when you went there, it would be resources that would help you. So that's what, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I just don't have the technology skills and the bandwidth to do it. But do I have it on my website? No, because my website goes all over the world and a lot of it isn't.
Yeah.
And that's an example, I think, of your teenage kids. Maybe they would help you look at resources. And one of your family projects could be, let's make a list of resources locally where we can turn the things we're not using into blessings for other people.
That's really good. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up, tell us, last night you spoke and it was, you were speaking to worn out Christian women, most likely.
There was one man in the audience and I went up and said, I'm so glad. He said, I loved it.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not a women specific, but we are the ones who tend to, take care of the home and keep the things. Or, for my example, last night or 2 nights ago, I cleaned the counter and they're like, were the cleaning ladies here? And I was like, no, it was me. And now that the counter's empty, if anything lands on the counter, I know who put it there and you're going to be responsible for picking it up.
Kill you.
Yes. It is the one thing that I'm possessive over is that island. It's enormous and it will go from clean to disaster in an instant. And it's not my stuff.
No, I just to tell you how about on that countertop thing is that the cleaning ladies, you clean before the cleaning ladies get there, obviously, to put things.
Yeah, you pick up the clutter so they can actually clean the.
Right, exactly. But my husband finally realized that it is not a wise statement to say when he comes home on the day that the cleaning ladies. Were the cleaning ladies even here? You know what? It's been 5 hours. Things happen. Okay. Like they left.
And life continues.
And life continues. You need to show up 30 minutes after they're gone because that's about it. But, come on.
One of my favorite cartoons in the world I saw this, 30 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. And there's this woman in the middle of this chaos with toys and stuff like that. And her husband walks in the door and she says, you asked me what I do all day. Well, today I didn't do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes there's days like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go back to you spoke last night. You said that, it was 20 minutes of speaking and then there was a lot of questions for an hour and a half. And obviously we don't have that much time, but what would you say was the common question, common concern? We are worn out. We are tired. We are, managing our houses, our kids, working. We all have our own purpose and ministries. And it's how can we either take it in bite-sized pieces? So I guess what's the main question? And then your last bit, how can we take it in bite-sized pieces?
Well, the thing that came up last night, which is confirmed what I've seen in 40 years, is the biggest fear, the biggest problem is there's something I really want to get rid of or really don't want. And it might be handmade quilts by my grandmother. I really don't want it. But I saw people scrunch up their face. They'd say, I just can't let it go. The issue is that's emotion, and you have to be willing to go through that emotion. And that means you can weep over it. You can throw those books away. You can donate those. Jesus wept.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you hold on to something that you're really not using and really don't need, you're preventing the ability for you to do what really God intends you to do, which is something far more important. So it's being willing to go through that emotion. So ask yourself the question, what's one thing that has to happen in my life for me to be happy with my progress? And it might be clean. Last night, 3 or 4 people said, clean the garage. I go in the car. One person said, I can't park my car in the garage, which is, it's 35% of people in the United States don't park the car in the garage because it's full of clutter. And so whatever that is, and then start working on that. And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether you ask for a professional. If you go on our website, productiveenvironment.com, there's lots of free resources. We have lots of webinars, some of which are free. Ask a neighbor. Remember I said that one of the issues of solving this were 3 things. It's systems, accountability, and community. Okay. So if you need to clean your garage, find a neighbor that needs to clean their garage and go do it together. Hold each other accountable and help each other. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. God says you do not have because you do not ask. And that's true at many, many levels.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes. I love that.
Yes. Well, I want to just say thank you so much, Barbara, for stepping out in faith and putting an ad in the newspaper that cost you, $7, which was, thousands at the time, I'm sure, for your oh my gosh, is this going to even be worth it? But just putting your faith out there and doing exactly what God called you to do. And then I want to say just thank you for when you started to open your mouth and speak the words of Jesus into where these people's homes and these people's offices. I can only imagine how many people you have impacted, not only by showing the love of Christ, but by doing the work of Christ in their spaces and introducing them to Christ. So I just want to say thank you so much because of your obedience and your faithfulness, how many people have been brought into the kingdom of heaven. I just want to just say thank you for that.
Thank you. Just recently, a man that was a client of mine in a business said to me, we organized his office because his boss had hired me to organize his office. And he said, you are so kind. And I just said, it's not me, it's Jesus. And that's all.
Yeah.
Just planted that seed.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, where can our audience find you? We're going to have all these links and these things to follow you and the 14-minute video in our show notes. But where can they find you? Website, Instagram, socials, anything like that?
Well, my website is barbarahemphill.com. You can go on there. You can schedule, anyone is welcome to schedule a 30-minute, what I call discovery session, in which we can get you on the right track, point you in the right direction, introduce you to people. And then there's lots of books that are on Amazon that I've written. I do YouTube videos. If you go on YouTube, you will see a lot. And Productive Environment Institute, the company that I founded, we do a podcast called Pep Talk every Tuesday at noon that deals with different issues. So there's tons and tons of resources to get help, but you need to be specific about what answer you want. And if you ask us, I'm looking for a resource to do this, we'll be happy to answer you.
Awesome.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for all of this wisdom and encouragement, and let's declutter.
Yeah, I'm going to go clean out my guest bedroom. That's just stuff that's going to make me do that. But again, thank you so much, Barbara. We so appreciate it, your wisdom and your gift of sharing that with us. And until next time, housewives, bye.
Bye.
Whether we made you laugh or cry today, we pray you feel appreciated, bolder and braver than yesterday, stronger and more faithful for tomorrow, and living in who you were made to be today.
Join our online community on Facebook, link in the show notes, and be sure to review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you enjoy listening. Until next time, housewives, we give you permission to walk confidently, free, and to be intentional in your slippers or stilettos.